It started with whispers inside the Belarusian military, quiet conversations behind closed doors, hushed voices in corridors, and then suddenly, everything changed. Reports began surfacing that Belarusian generals were openly questioning Alexander Lukashenko's leadership, and now those whispers have turned into a storm. Could this be the beginning of the end for Europe's last dictatorship? This isn't just another political headline. This could reshape the power balance across Eastern Europe. For decades, Lukashenko has ruled Belarus with an iron fist. He's survived protests, sanctions, assassination rumors, and international isolation. But what he's facing now is different. Because this time, the threat isn't coming from the streets or from the West. It's coming from inside his own military. According to emerging intelligence leaks and sources close to Minsk, several high-ranking Belarusian generals have grown increasingly frustrated with Lukashenko's loyalty to Moscow. They see the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war as a disaster, one that's dragged Belarus into a geopolitical mess it never asked for. These generals are reportedly warning that Lukashenko's continued support for Vladimir Putin could destroy Belarus's stability and sovereignty. Some have allegedly refused to cooperate with plans to deploy more Belarusian troops near the Ukrainian border. Others have gone even further, voicing discontent in private meetings and communications that, until now, would have been unthinkable. If these reports are true, it's a seismic shift, because the Belarusian military has long been considered one of Lukashenko's most loyal pillars of power, the same force that helped crush mass protests after the disputed 2020 election. If cracks are forming there, his control could be slipping fast. So what's fueling this rebellion behind the scenes? Analysts point to a combination of exhaustion, fear, and a growing sense that Lukashenko is dragging the country toward catastrophe. Belarusian officers are watching what's happening to Russia's army in Ukraine, the massive casualties, the global isolation, the economic collapse, and many want no part of it. Internally, the country's economy is struggling under the weight of sanctions. Prices are soaring, wages are stagnant, and discontent among civilians is spreading again. Soldiers and their families are feeling it too. The idea of risking their lives in a war that isn't theirs is becoming harder to justify. But Lukashenko isn't the type to step aside quietly. He's already responded to these rumors with anger, calling them Western propaganda and vowing to root out traitors from the ranks. Sources inside the Belarusian security services say loyalty checks are being carried out daily, and surveillance within the armed forces has intensified. If that sounds familiar, it's because we've seen this playbook before. In dictatorships where paranoia replaces trust, and the leader starts to fear his own generals more than the enemy outside. And the timing couldn't be worse for him. Russia, Lukashenko's closest ally, is stretched thin in Ukraine. Moscow can't afford instability in Belarus, which serves as a key launchpad and logistics route for Russian military operations. But Putin also can't be seen interfering too openly. Doing so might only deepen resentment among the Belarusian officers already questioning Moscow's grip. That leaves Lukashenko in a dangerous position, isolated, suspicious, and surrounded by people whose loyalty is no longer guaranteed. If this situation escalates, there are a few possible outcomes, none of them simple. Scenario 1. Lukashenko clamps down hard, purging the military leadership and replacing generals with younger, more loyal officers. This could restore short-term control, but it risks alienating even more of the army. Scenario 2. A silent power struggle unfolds behind the scenes, with the military slowly distancing itself from Lukashenko's orders, refusing deployments, or quietly aligning with factions calling for neutrality in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And then there's the unthinkable. Scenario 3, a full-scale military split. If key commanders refuse Lukashenko's authority, the regime could crumble almost overnight. We've seen similar patterns in countries like Egypt, Libya, and even parts of the former Soviet Union. Once the military fractures, everything can unravel fast. Internationally, everyone's watching closely. Western governments have long wanted to see cracks within Lukashenko's system, but they're also wary. A power vacuum in Belarus could trigger instability across NATO's eastern flank, right on the doorstep of Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine. Moscow, meanwhile, would view any military rebellion in Belarus as an existential threat. Losing Lukashenko, or worse, seeing him replaced by a more neutral or Western-leaning leadership, would shatter one of Putin's few remaining alliances. And that's why intelligence reports suggest that Russian security advisors are already quietly working inside Belarus, trying to track disloyal officers and shore up Lukashenko's position. The Kremlin cannot afford another ally falling apart, not while it's locked in a grinding war of attrition in Ukraine. But what's fascinating and alarming is that this internal pressure is growing not from opposition activists or foreign agents, but from within Lukashenko's own ranks. These are men who once stood by him through every crisis, and now they're beginning to see him as the problem, not the protector. One European analyst described it perfectly. When the generals start whispering, the countdown begins. And make no mistake, the countdown might already be ticking. If the regime falls, it won't happen through protests on the streets this time. It'll happen quietly, in the corridors of power, with generals turning their backs one by one. No explosions, no parades, just the sudden silence of a dictatorship collapsing from within. Still, Lukashenko has survived crises before. He's a political survivor, a man who's mastered the art of fear. He knows how to divide his enemies, play Moscow against the West, and use propaganda to rewrite the story. But even for him, this challenge is unprecedented, because no amount of censorship or threats can rebuild trust once it's broken inside the military. The big question now, how far will the generals go? Will they confront him openly? Will they try to remove him quietly behind closed doors? Or will fear keep them loyal, at least for a while longer? As of now, no one truly knows. But history tells us that when leaders lose their armies, their days are numbered. And for Belarus, this isn't just about one man's fall. It's about what comes next. A possible reshaping of alliances, a shift in the region's balance of power, and maybe even a chance for the country to reclaim its independence from Moscow's shadow. Whatever happens, one thing's certain. Belarus is standing on a knife's edge, and the next few weeks could decide its future for decades to come. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to subscribe for daily global updates, like the video to support independent reporting, and share your thoughts below. Do you think Lukashenko's regime is finally collapsing? Or will he find a way to survive once again? Let's hear your take in the comments. Stay tuned, because the story in Belarus is far from over.